You're invited to get weird with us, with the woo-woo crowd. Welcome to our channel. This is where every day an alternative healing, spirituality, and creativity collide. You're going to meet Steph, myself, Katie, and a ton of other interesting humans. Death, grieving, and the afterlife. What do you believe? That's what we're exploring today with Hilary, our incredibly fascinating and totally vulnerable guest. Hilary is a nurse, and she used to not believe in the afterlife, in God and spirituality. But after working with patients at the end of their lifetimes and seeing the peace that she observed, her whole perspective changed. So in this episode, you're going to hear all about Hilary's story. You're going to hear about Steph's perspective on death and some of her experiences. And then I'm going to go real deep into my total fear of death. Death scares the shit out of me. All right, y'all, here we go. Let's get weird with the woo-woo crowd. Welcome Hilary to our channel.
So let's do it. Okay, so let me introduce. We already know you. You're Katie. I'm Stephanie, and I want to introduce Hilary.
Hi.
Hey, Hilary. So the reason why we want to interview you today is because at one point in your life, let me just give you a backstory, folks. Hilary's been one of my best friends since we were in 7th grade. So I already know her backstory, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the Cliff's Notes. Hilary's a nurse, and as long as I've known her, she's been an atheist. And a few years ago, she took a job with hospice, and I was working at a cancer center at the same time. So we had a lot of overlap in patients, and we would talk a lot about, seeing people die and, spiritually what that's like and how hard it is sometimes. And I noticed kind of a shift in her with this job. And go ahead and take it from here, Hilary. Tell us a little bit about your spiritual background and kind of where you were most of your adulthood into now and why.
Okay. So I was raised in a very Christian-oriented household. We were Lutherans. So I grew up going through catechism and many Lutheran type backgrounds in the church. And we were required to go to church every Sunday as children and required to pray and follow all of the expected norms of that type of household. And I never really fully bought into the Christianity belief system. Fast forward, I became a teenager, more rebellious, decided that church definitely was not for me. I did not believe anything, whether it was strictly because I was a teenager who was rebelling or because of the actual material, who really knows. But as I grew up and pondered a lot in my life and went through varied experiences, I really felt that religion in and of itself was more of a crutch for people, was more of a thing that they fall back on to have hope and something to look forward to. And really did not believe in that system at all, which really led me to atheism, where what happens when we die? Well, at that point in my life, I truly believe that we just die and we're dead. And that's kind of where it ends, because there isn't much of a spiritual being that goes on. There isn't a heaven or a hell or, any variation of what different religions believe happens after we die. But whatever fates aligned for me, I ended up in hospice care. And before that, as a nurse, I had been in the ER and the ICU for a long time and saw many tragedies unfold in people's lives. Those are probably some of the most traumatic moments you can come to meet another person, when they're experiencing something that ends them up in an emergency room or an intensive care unit. So I had still been exposed to those things and maintained my belief system, even though I stood and held hands with people as they passed away in that job. But going into hospice really exposed me to something entirely different. People who had time to prepare and accept that they were dying, people that had time to reflect and be okay with what was ahead, and their families that were working through that process as well. But the things that I experienced in hospice were entirely different, and the kind of eye-opening things that I saw have really changed my trajectory in life as it comes with spirituality. I am definitely still not a religious person in the sense of like considering myself Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or any other variation of faith that there is, but I definitely am a spiritual person, and I do believe that there is something bigger than us. I don't know that I call it a God. My personal belief is more in a system of a universe that pushes and pulls and has checks and balances, but that we are souls, spiritual beings inside of a physical body that will perish, and we in some way go on. I'm not sure the exact specifications of that And I don't think that anybody is, because we haven't died yet. But in hospice, there were things that I couldn't explain that happened. And for example, people with dementia or other illnesses that they could not really articulate or think the clearest at that point in their lives. And they would have people come to them to call them home, family members. And I don't know that it's as pivotal for me to tell it as it is to experience it. But in those moments, when you work with patients over and over that have debilitating mental illnesses that don't allow them to think like the rest of us do, you can see kind of the lost in their eyes. You can see when you look at them that they aren't fully there or aware, understanding the same reality. But in some of these moments that I shared with those patients, they seemed to be very clear on what was happening and what they were seeing. And I really can sort of compare it to what people say as like seeing through the veil to the other side. That was something that I experienced with all ranges of patients, young, old, very acutely ill, not very far along in their terminal illness, that they would be able to see and experience things from another realm or place that couldn't be explained. And I would have regularly people say to me, I'm not going to see you again. And I would say, haha, that's, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you next week at our visit. No, I'm not going to be here anymore, because I know that I'm leaving, and I'm at peace with that. And a lot of people would see former relatives, spouses that had passed on, parents, and they were not people that were heavily medicated. They were not people that didn't know what reality we were in at that time. They were people that would say, sometimes even a little bit fearfully, that they saw someone that has passed on, and they've basically come to them to comfort them and let them know that their time is coming and it is okay, and they don't need to be afraid of that. I'm a very reality driven person. I need proof of things, but my experiences in hospice were enough to change my total trajectory in life to there is something bigger than us, and it's worth paying attention to in my day-to-day life. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, Katie is definitely, I need physical proof. Like, I need to see it, touch it. And I thought, because you used to very much be like that, it would be interesting for you and Katie to chat about that.
Yeah, because for me, it's like I used to be the same way, where I thought there's nothing. Like, we're just here. Magically, we appear somehow. We're here, and then whatever happens, happens. Like, I never, ever was religious ever in my life. I've honestly can't even remember going to church ever, like ever. So in my mind, I 100% believe in things like karma. Like you said, Hilary, the universe, the push and pull, things happen in response to that. And that for me, living is like just being a good person, and karma is a huge part of that. And I just have trouble, like the intangible, all of the things in all religion, like how it all started. For me, it's just hard to believe. For me, it feels like a story, I guess. And I'm not saying that to be offensive or rude, because I respect all religions and whatever anyone wants to believe. But for me personally, I just can't, like my brain can't go there. But I have come around and I've become more spiritual. I think a lot of things have happened to me too in life, lots of hard things. And I think you said something really good in the beginning. It's like, sometimes like I can look at religion and be like, oh, they just believe that for hope. But like, what's wrong with that? Because I believe in things for hope. So that's where I'm at right now. Like, there's something going on in the universe. I believe in karma. I believe in all that stuff. And I believe in the things that you just shared too. Like, I believe those things happened. I just haven't reached a point where I've been able to put it all together for myself, I guess. But that's where I'm at with all religion and spirituality. I can't even say the word. All right, I'm not going to try and say it. Can't talk.
What do you think there's life after death? Do you think the soul goes on?
Yes, I think so, because I think I've had little experiences with people in my life that have passed away, that I think that maybe they've visited me, or I've gotten like a very intense feeling like that they are around me. So yeah, in some way. But then the logical part of my brain is like, no, Katie, no, that's impossible. But why is it? I mean, we're here. We got here somehow.
Yeah.
We didn't just it's just, I will never know, I don't think. And I think that drives me crazy too. I guess maybe we will know after we die.
Yeah, 1000%.
Yeah, I think that is the only time we get to find out what really happens. I know there's a lot of people that watch videos about near-death experiences and what people go through. And I think, and Steph can actually talk more to some of this, the brain goes through chemical changes as we're dying. And I think some of the weird things that happen can be attributed to that. And it's a really hard line to separate what is the actual reality that someone in those situations experiences versus what is really your brain going through something that it hasn't gone through before because it's dying. And yeah, I think it's a really hard line to be able to draw, and everybody should be able to come to their own conclusions. I very much respect people who follow a religion. It is tough to blindly follow something when you have no tangible proof. It is tough. So the fact that there are people that can do that and be so firm in that belief system, I think it's a great thing because there is a lot of power to be driven from people coming together and having a common belief. But at the same time, I have just, in my background and experiences, I've seen it come together too many times in a negative way. I walked out of our church life as a child with a lot of trauma, with a lot of things that I felt very large amounts of shame and guilt for just being who I was because it wasn't accepted in that framework of the Christianity I was raised in. You know, I guess I don't want it to come across, and I know that I don't think that it did, but I have a lot of respect for people with religions, religious belief systems, but that is not something that I find hope in. However, I think it is really important for everybody to have something that they can, like, at the end of the day, put some faith into and believe in and makes you feel good when you go to sleep at night when the world doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think what you said too, like, brings something to my mind of like, you have these traumatic experiences, and I can't say that I do. I've heard stories about like my parents growing up in the Catholic church system and like getting smacked at school and, things like that. So I've heard inklings of that kind of stuff from my own family. But I think part of my hesitation too comes down to using religion as a weapon to do bad things. That's what gets me going. Like, hey, you're not allowed to be gay because my religion says that you're not allowed to. And obviously that's not what this conversation is about, but I think that's part of my personal about organized religion that grinds my gears when it's not for good, when it's to hurt other people and violence and things like that.
Yeah. And definitely there is a lot of that in the world, unfortunately. But I do think that religion in some ways has loosened up. I mean, I have gay people in my family, and one in particular does still regularly go to church and feels at their church. Yeah, but in the place that I live, religion that is organized, it can be very hateful. And I don't know that it's really beneficial in that way, even when it brings about this camaraderie of people who have something similar to fall back on. So I get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
Guys, I cannot wait to read the comment section of this video. It's not going to be pretty. Let me just say, this is our opinions. None of us are telling you what to believe.
No.
Or what to believe is wrong. This is our own opinions and our own spiritual journey.
Please don't attack us.
I'm a live and let live kind of gal. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I'm not going after, like, in my day-to-day religion, like, it doesn't cross my mind. Like, it doesn't, it's not on my agenda or anything like that. Like you said, live and let live, unless you're hurting people. And no, but that could be anyone, not even to do with religion. Yeah.
I mean, growing up in a rural area like we all did, it's almost social conditioning. Like, you're only a good person if you go to church, and you have to go to church. And this is probably going to be a wild statement, but I'm going to go with it. I personally don't believe that God, source, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I grew up thinking that God was a man with a white beard that sits on a throne and judges everybody. After having a spiritual awakening, that's not at all what I believe. I think that I am God and that you are God, and, John Doe is God. And I think we're all God. I think we're all connected. And I think we're just God living out experiences in different human conditions for our souls to grow and learn. I personally believe that I've had thousands of lives. I believe in past lives. I think we come to this earth for a purpose. I think we come to learn lessons and level up, so to speak. And so for me, it's drastically different than what I was taught and conditioned to, because I went through a very hard time in my life. You ladies were there, and I was very angry at God and what I thought was God, kind of waking up from that and really trying to, instead of figure out what God is, just try to live like God. Kind of helped me reconcile that, like, instead of trying to figure it out or label it, like, just try to give a better version of yourself to what you're sharing with, which is the collective.
I can see that. So you think, so let me repeat in a way that, like, I'm hearing you. So you believe that all of us walking on earth, instead of just one God, we're all like God and like living out this like collective mission ish?
Yeah, like think of us like a piece of yarn. Like we're all a piece of yarn that is wound together to make a giant blanket, right? So you have all these different souls, but we're all connected. We're all a piece of the puzzle. Like if God was one big puzzle, we would each be a little piece, is kind of how I look at it. And I think, we come here for purposes. Sometimes they're hard missions. Some people have kind of what looks like an easy life. Some people have very hard lives. We all have struggles, big and small, every day. It's part of the human condition. And I think we come here to learn from those struggles. Our soul incarnates to just become better, more knowledge, more empathy, almost like a video game, like you're leveling up. Whereas the more times you come, your character builds strength.
Okay,
And
so
that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, so my
Not to be
question
anybody
there
else.
is, what's the end game? What's the because what you're describing sounds like very mission oriented, like that we're getting better and better, more empathy, growing as human race. But to me, why? What is the end game on Earth?
To better humanity, to better your soul.
I guess for me, I go so far down the line where I'm like, end of human race, what's the point? That's where my mind goes. It's like, what? I want the answer so bad. So bad. But I hear you. I hear you.
Personally, I don't think that our human brains can understand. I think it's so powerful and amazing and magnificent that our brains cannot even comprehend something on that scale because we're just puny humans in this form. Yeah. We're spiritual beings, but right now we're in these avatars, these meat suits, and these meat suits expire. They don't last forever. Hilary will be the first one to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, and to that, what you're saying about it being hard to comprehend, I always compare things that get really hard to comprehend in my brain to trying to understand the infiniteness of our universe. Mm-hmm. It's not, you just cannot wrap your head around.
I know, but I want to.
I know, me too. And that feeling.
You're it's so right.
One of those that we don't have the capacity to fully understand. And, that's why I think no one is wrong on whatever your spiritual journey is. You are not wrong, and you can choose to believe in whatever you wish. Mm-hmm. And we all be wrong at the end of it. Some of us could be right. Nobody really knows until we get there, but it does give you hope that there is something better. And I think that's what we as a collective are all looking for, just that there's something better, because our world is a crazy, sometimes very depressing and sad place to be. And it's just nice to know that there might be something bigger and better out there, and that we're all kind of striving towards, no matter what your actual specific belief system is.
Right.
Yeah. Cause if there's nothing after death, right? What's the point of being a good person? What would be the point? You're not going to have any kind of reconciliation, right? You just go around and taking what you want and kicking some ass.
Are you sure
but our higher, I'm sorry?
I said, are you sure that some people don't just live that way now?
Well, I think they do.
Plenty.
You just don't care.
But I think our higher selves, when you're not being kind or you're being not your best self, on some level, your gut will tell you, hey, pump your brakes. And I think that's our soul, because our soul is much wiser than our brain and our meat suit,
So here's a question for you both. What time is it? Now that you have had these awakenings and these things have happened, before, were you afraid to die? And now, are you afraid to die?
I'll let Hilary go first since she's our guest.
I would say that before, I wasn't afraid to die, because when you're a nurse in the kind of environment that I chose to be in, death really is a regular part of your working day. And I accepted long ago that really is just something we all go through at some point. I guess I'd always hoped for myself it wouldn't be some traumatic, awful thing that happened for my sake and for the sake of my family, because once we're gone, we don't have to deal with whatever trauma our death causes, but everybody else does. So I wouldn't say I was afraid to die. I would probably say I was more afraid of just the unknown of it, because I had no belief. I was like, well, when we die, we're dead. What does that look like as I'm actually dying? What is my brain thinking? What experiences am I going to have? Is it going to be scary? Is it going to hurt? I think things that probably most people logistically go through in their head at some point, because we all know we have to die eventually. But now I find a lot more peace in that, because I really do think that I will see or experience loved ones, whether they were humans or pets or just different bonds that we've created in this life, that you will be able to reconnect with those bonds in some spiritual way in a different realm or wherever it is that we end up. And so I find a lot more peace in that, just because that's one of the things as an atheist that's really hard, is like the finality of death. Everything is gone. You'll never see these people again. You'll never get to have these connections again. And you just go back to the dust from where you came. So I feel like there's a lot more peace now for me in feeling sure in my own way that there is something else out there.
For me, I would say I was afraid to die because I didn't think, like, what if I end up in hell for eternity because of whatever bullshit I did? And I promise you, I did it all. And now I'm not afraid to die at all. Like, if a tragedy happens, it happens. Like, it's just a meat suit, you know? I mean, I don't want to die young, but when my time is up, it's up, and I'm not afraid. I'm pretty sure, you know, whatever it is, heaven, paradise, whatever, I don't have to pee every 30 minutes, and I won't have to pay taxes or scoop up dog poop. So, you know,
Hopefully, you don't know that.
well, that's true. But I won't have a bladder, so that's something.
That's true.
You know, no hangovers in heaven. But I just feel like at peace with it. And, you know, unfortunately, I've had a lot of death in my life, as have you. And I think, you know, just feeling kind of at peace, like I'm going to see those people again at this point. Like, I have to, because I miss them all so much. Like, I have to see them again. So that's not negotiable in my brain for my own mental health, you know?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, you know, when I worked at the cancer center and people were terminal and they were dying, it really wasn't the patients that were upset that they were dying. I mean, there was a few people, very young people or very sudden illness, but for the most part, the majority of the patients, they were at peace. It was their family. That's where you would feel the grief, you know, is the family, not the patient. The patient, you know, they just know tickets up. It is what it is. It's the families. It's and like Hilary said, it's the people you leave behind. That's the hard. Grief is hard, you know?
Yeah. I think from my perspective, like, I've always been afraid of dying. And I think that goes back to, like Hilary said, atheism, or if you're agnostic, it's like, what is there? Well, nothing. So it's just, okay, well, I'm here on earth and I feel really passionate about what I'm doing right now. And I'd be pissed if I died. Like, damn, I have so much more work to do. That's what I think. Because in my mind, it's like, poof, you're gone. And then the other side of that too is growing up. When people died, I never knew how to grieve. I don't think I actually ever grieved someone dying in my life until 2 years ago. Well, actually, like a year and a half, when my friend Chris died. That was the first time I feel like I wasn't like, you know, numbing my emotions all the time. And like, I finally knew how to grieve. So I think I'm like slowly getting there. But before, like, I didn't, like, someone died and it's traumatic. And we would go to the funeral and then it would never be spoken of again.
Yeah.
And that's what death was to me. Like, that person just is like gone. No one ever speaks of them again. So like, in my mind, that's death. I die. People are going to come to my funeral the next day, back to normal life, my work. You know, I didn't get to finish what I wanted to do here on earth. And, you know, dying young is what I'm talking about. But I've always had that fear. And then people around me dying too. I'm always afraid of people around me dying. Because like you said, Steph, I've had a lot of people die young. I've had 2 people that I've been very close with commit suicide. And it's like, sometimes you're just like, this is unfair. What the hell? Why? Yeah. So I think at this point in my life, I'm still working through all those things. So maybe in 5 years, check back with me. Maybe I'm where you guys are at. Cause like, ultimately I hear you. I believe you. I would love to have that like peace, but I don't have that. I still have fear for sure. And I've also never been around anyone that was dying. Like, I've never like physically ever been around anything.
It humbles you, and it really does. It's not fun, but in a weird way, it's truly kind of beautiful because you see this person, you know, become at peace. And like you said, in the world we live in today, there's not a lot of peace. It's not a lot of peace. So in a strange way, it can be very, you know, beautiful for the person that's going through it. It's not for the people that love them around. But I don't think there's any right way to grieve. And I don't think there's any right way to believe in God. Like, I think everybody should do what feels right to them. And as far as grieving goes, you never stop, ever, ever. I think you just learn to live in a different way because you're changed. You know, you're a different person.
Viewers, tell us in the comments. What do you think? Don't rip us to shreds, please.
Yes, we're living and let living, baby. Well, Hilary, thank you.
Yes.
For coming on here and sharing your story. I know you are not super extroverted, and you just shared your very personal spiritual journey with the entire world. So thank you.
Yes.
I owe you for that.
Yeah. It's not a problem. I just hope that through you guys sharing things and having your interviews and that people can see just different perspectives, because there are so many out there, and really it does not make you right or wrong. Just be kind and respect the other person's opinion.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for having me and letting me share my story with you guys.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Steph, you want to close us out? What do you got to say?
Well, folks, please, I hate to be that gal, but please like and subscribe, because that way our video gets out to more people and we can grow this channel and get some more interviews going on. And like I said, I promised you guys a cast of characters, and the more views we get, the more characters we can unlock. So again, please like, subscribe, set the notification bell. Eventually we will be going live. This channel is new. Give us a minute to catch our breath and figure out our rhythm. Okay, I appreciate your patience. And like Katie said, let us know in the comments what your take on it is. And no bullying and no hate speech in there, people.
None. It will be deleted. I am dealing with it.
1000%. For every subscribe, Jimmy here will get an extra treat.